So I haven't done a video in a while, and I thought, considering the team made huge news by hiring their 19th head coach in Ralph Krueger, this would be a good time to come on here and maybe just give my thoughts about it a little bit. Um, Originally, when Ralph Krueger was talked about as being like a serious candidate for the job, I had tweeted out saying that I felt that it was a too cute answer for a very serious situation. And although I do feel that way still, after really thinking about it a little bit, the end game, if it goes poorly, is the same. If Jason Botterill decided to hire somebody from the hockey establishment and they failed, he would lose his job. So hiring Ralph Krueger, although risky in some ways, if it goes poorly, it still would be the same end result. So in that regard, I kind of commend Jason Botterill with going with his gut with something and taking a little bit of a risk in hiring somebody that may not be seen as conventional. Ralph Krueger is also making me think just a little bit about coaching and the differences. Now, today I had read an article written by Ben Mathewson for Die by the Blade, and having him just kind of talk about how we really don't know how to take the hiring of Ralph Krueger, and we don't really know what to expect because we have so little to go from, with only having him be a head coach for 48 games, and then prior to that being an associate coach for 2 years. So there's a really small sample size, so we don't know what we're getting. And I thought he had a really interesting line in there, how throughout the entire process of the Sabres trying to find their next head coach, Ben had tried to really shut off all the bias that he had towards them going with some sort of tactician, that's what he wanted them to do. And I agree with Ben. That's kind of what I wanted them to do. I wanted them to hire somebody who was innovative with their system and player usage, especially considering that seemed to be a fault of Phil Housley. But now that I'm thinking about it more, Ralph Krueger might be a best of both worlds sort of hire, because he is somebody who's not a tactician, and I would say that based on all the feedback that we have gotten about him, he is somebody that is considered a communicator and motivator. I called him Ted Nolan with a college degree. I think he's sort of like that, and that sounds like some sort of backhanded compliment, but it's really not meant that way. It's just kind of how I see the whole thing. And there was a story about Ralph Krueger and his time with the World Cup of Hockey, and how his staff, he relied heavily on Paul Maurice as being the X's and O's guy for Team Europe. And it got me thinking, first his hiring of his associate coaches are going to be huge. If they're able to hire somebody who's very good with X's and O's, then you have that portion of it, and then you'll have Ralph Krueger, who is supposed to be a really good communicator. You'll have him to convey those ideas to the players. The one thing with, talking about somebody who might be good at being a good tactician is he would have to also be a really good communicator. And sometimes people aren't great at everything. If you're a good tactician, you might not be able to relate to your players and able to teach them what's going on in your mind. But if Ralph Krueger, who appears to be super intelligent, is able to take what his associate coach is teaching and then put it in a way where his players can understand it or buy into it, then you have the best of both worlds. And that's why I think that it's rather interesting to have a coach like Ralph Krueger, who's more of a motivator and communicator. So that's kind of shifting my belief a little bit about the hire, and it's making me think that it's a real big positive. I like the fact that he seems really intelligent and really articulate. I would like to think that matters in any job that you have. If you have intelligence and the ability to communicate your thoughts in a thorough manner to somebody else, that should set you up on a track to success anywhere. So I would like to think that it applies to being a hockey coach. And I know this doesn't matter probably, but I felt like the last coaches we had a real inability to explain their thoughts in interviews. And it might be just them not being comfortable around the media, but there hasn't been a coach since Lindy Ruff where I said, well, I really got to listen to what this guy has to say. Most of them came across boring, or like I said, they would just stumble over their thoughts or have a difficult time just conveying it to whoever's asking them a question about their team. I don't think we'll have that issue with Ralph Krueger. I also think there's certain levels, at a certain level, the hiring of Krueger will allow the organization to be healthier. Now, I want to talk about the Bills a little bit because with them having the same owners, there's always going to have certain philosophies interwoven with each other. And with the Bills, I don't know if they're going to be successful. But there's a couple things I do know is their downfall will never be disorganization. It appears that they have a goal in mind and they know the steps that they need to take to reach that goal. And everybody in the organization is pushing the cart in the same direction. Now that direction might be a team that's built for football in the 1980s. We really don't know. We don't know if that's going to account for wins. But I know that they're on the same page. I didn't get that feeling with the Sabres. Not to say that Jason Botterill and Phil Housley had some sort of conflict with each other, but I just didn't feel like they were on the same page. Jason Botterill would talk about player usage specifically with Rasmus Ristolainen or Sam Reinhart. Ristolainen shouldn't be getting a ton of ice time. We should limit his ice time and he shouldn't get top pairing minutes. Or Sam has the ability to drive his own line. But then Phil Housley would still stick to Sam playing with Jack Eichel or Risto getting a ton of time on the ice. And that just didn't mesh. And I think it's really important that that they have like minds within the room of like the brain trust with the Sabres, because it's going to make it really difficult to be a successful team if people are not pulling the cart in the right direction. So I think the Bills have that right, and I think that the Sabres are trying to emulate what's going on with the Bills, and this might be their step towards that. Now, Jason Botterill has a couple guys that it appears that he trusts, like Randy Sexton, and that's great because when you talk about Pittsburgh, and I think a lot of people say like Jason Botterill did all the smart stuff and Jim Rutherford did all the dumb stuff, and you can see that play out in real time now. But when you read the thoughts of some really smart people surrounding the Penguins, one who I really like is Ryan Wilson. I think he's brilliant. He says that, no, that wasn't the case. What was going on in Pittsburgh was Jason Botterill had a respected voice in the room that Jim Rutherford would bounce ideas off of. And then Jason Botterill would voice his opinion on it, and then they would have some sort of consensus. And it was just a respected voice. I think Jason Botterill is trying to find his respected voice in the room and trying to accumulate a bunch of people, like an inner circle, sort of, so to speak, that he trusts and respects to then help him build his vision for the team. Jason Botterill says a lot of really smart things, and he says the right things often, which is great because it appears like he knows what he has to do, but that's only 25% of it. The other 75% is executing your plan and then building your team that fits your vision of what is hopefully a very successful organization. Another thing I wanted to bring up was Kyle Dubas talking. I think it was at one of the analytics conference. I think it was the Sloan Analytics Conference about Sheldon Keefe and how that was just such a it was like an aha moment to where he felt like that's when everything clicked with Sault Ste. Marie, was when he got Sheldon Keefe, because he was giving a coach all this these advanced statistics, and the coach was applying it to how he was handling his roster. And that's when the program really took off. And it's again another example of everybody having the same goal and the same mindset. And I think that that's what we're trying to achieve. I think that's what this hire is about. It's not just specifically about hockey, it's about the health of the entire organization. So that's my thoughts about Ralph Krueger. Thank you for listening. And I guess we got to see what they're going to do with Jeff Skinner. That's going to be the next thing. All right. Thank you.